Ryan, your youth board chair, and let's move to my right.
Bill Chung, Commissioner of DYCD.
Anthony Sumter, HRA.
George Hulse, Health First.
Chris Neale, Director of the New York City Workforce Development Board.
Maureen O'Connor, Queens Library.
Good morning, I'm Yael Bat-Chava, Senior Director of Evaluation here at DYCD.
Vanessa Rios, DYCD.
Lydia Small, Deputy Director at the Center for Youth Employment.
Good morning, Michael Nemoyden. I'm the Commanding Officer of the Juvenile Justice Division of the NYPD, part of the Community Affairs Bureau.
Morning, Liz Cribbs with the Newburgh Berman Foundation.
Good morning, Ana Garcia Reyes, Associate Dean at Ostos Community College of the City University of New York.
Good morning, Courtney Ramirez, representing Gladys Carrion from ACS.
Ray Lenowski, Executive Director, Trustees of the Sailor Slug Harbor in the City of New York.
Tom Pendleton, New York City Department of Education.
Nancy Wax, Dean, Fordham University Graduate School of Social Service.
Anthony Ng, DYCD.
Randall Graham, Coordinator with the Workforce Development Board.
Denise Williams, Deputy Commissioner of DYCD.
Ken Wampler, the Alpha Workshops.
Mark Misrak, National Working Positive Coalition.
Who are you?
Kurt Sonnenfeld.
There you go. We got everybody. Okay. All right. Now I'll turn over to the Commissioner.
Okay. I know there's a pretty lengthy report, so I won't repeat that, but I guess the most important thing that I want to highlight is that we're still waiting on the budget for fiscal 17. It's a very different place to be in because I was here back in 2013, well after 2011. It was my last year here as Deputy Commissioner where we were doing our 10th round of cuts and trying to decide what would get restored by the council. And in the last year of the Bloomberg administration, out of a budget at that time of $350 million, the council restored something like $160 million, something like 42-43%. It's incredible. I was at that time working with Lillian Barrios Paoli at the Department of the Aging, and I said to her once that we should rename DYCD to the Department of Youth and Council Designation. And so it's a very different world today that, you know, this year's budget in fiscal 16 that's about to end, our budget was almost $700 million compared to $350 million in fiscal 13. So mostly doubled, almost doubled. So the question now before us is how much more money will we get from the City Council? And the big issues are obviously the Summer Youth Employment Program. I think the Council has talked about 60,000 jobs that's being negotiated. The big challenge is obviously capacity of the system and quality of the jobs. I think, you know, our staff has done an incredible job. Our workforce people are not here because they're busy placing the 35,000 young people who already got selected. We had 9,000 job placements last year. This year, about a month ago, we were at 40% more than we were last year. We had 7,000 job placements when we had 4,000. And we're getting great placements for young people. Nancy's been very helpful in, we're starting a partnership with the Mount Sinai Adolescent Health Center, Angela Diaz, where they've gotten funding to teach young people community asset mapping. And they didn't have money to pay the young people. So I said, if you want to be a work site, so 200 young people in East Harlem, East Fremont, and four neighborhoods, Chinatown, East Harlem, I think East Fremont, and Brownsville, are going to be spending the summer doing asset mapping. And be future community organizers and who knows, future commissioners. So our focus is really to get stable funding, obviously, for the Summer Youth Employment Program, because we think it'll have a lasting impact on the type of jobs. So that's the big question we're waiting for. I just want to highlight some of the new initiatives that we've launched. We procured our Community Drop-In Center program, which was called 10 years ago, Out of School Time Option 2. That was the name of the program. Yes. We now call it Compass Explore. And it's a drop-in model where we know that not every young person is going to show up 9, 10 hours a week. You want the freedom in the program so that young people come 2 or 3 hours a week and hopefully get connected to more long-range programming. So we did some things different this year. We set aside funding, so we now fund the first citywide drop-in center for gay youth, the first citywide drop-in center for youth with special needs. There was turnover, but in a competition, and this is the first time we did this competition in a decade. This was one of the first programs that Mayor Bloomberg cut, and it was restored annually. The individual contracts were restored annually for 4 consecutive years. So we're excited about that. We're bringing on new workforce providers. There's one up in the Bronx that I'm especially happy that we got on board. They're a subcontractor with FedCat, and it's a group called Startup Box. And they provide workforce training in the tech sector using gaming. And they focus on the most hard-to-serve young people. I went to their program in the heart of Hunts Point. It's probably a drug dealing corner, because when I left at 5 o'clock, all the cops start rolling in. And a lot of the young people that they work with are young people that, quite frankly, many programs give up on. So I'm excited about that program. And all of this is on our website. And as the programs roll out in the start of the summer and the fall, we'll do descriptions. But I just want to highlight those things. Any questions? Okay, no questions?
When the city council adds money for the summer youth employment program, do you have a sense of what it will be? I understand it's going to happen imminently, and how many additional slots that would buy?
Well, so we're at 35. We right now have funding for 35,000 jobs. The council's talked about getting to 60,000. So, which is why we started this year the planning again in January. We had the first meeting of the summer youth employment programs, about 100 programs at 2 Lafayette. I think it was 3 or 4 days before the snowstorm. Because we knew the hardest part is not recruiting young people. I mean, we had 138,000 applications. I think the second most in history. I mean, the fact we have an online application. I mean, people forget, they take these things for granted. And when I testified for the city council, a decade ago, we were using carbon copy applications. There's some staff who don't know what a carbon copy application looks like. Yes. And so I think the last year that the program used carbon copy applications, it was 70,000 applications. We routinely get 130,000 applications because it's an online application. It allows the young person to apply whenever, wherever to do it. And it allows us to collect a lot of helpful data in a format that we can use. So, we've been prepared to ramp up since January for at least 60,000. Hopefully it won't be more than 60,000. And at some point, hopefully the conversation will turn to, do we baseline these programs with this funding, and then we can redesign it. I mean, the things I would love to do if I had baseline funding is to develop an apprenticeship program with the career and technical education schools, so that what a young person learns during the school year can be amplified during the summer. Or Girls Who Code. There are some wonderful after-school programs that teach young people skills, but there's no opportunity to practice those skills in the summer environment. Or I know Lucy Friedman has a program to create a pipeline for future youth workers. But all that we can't do unless there is stable funding. So next year is a special year. Everyone's up for re-election, so I'm hopeful. And I'll leave it at that.
One question about the asset mapping. Were there any, do you know the numbers of young people that would be able to participate in that?
It's 200 young people, and it's a program that Angela got money, I think, from the New York State Health Foundation, and it's based on a model in Chicago. So I did a meeting with her, and I said, you do wonderful programs. I have no funding, because what she does, it doesn't fit with what we do. But when she mentioned this program, I said, well, it could be a work site. And so we had a great meeting with them, and so it's better than my first summer job, which was emptying out an empty lot in Chinatown. Anything else?
Okay, so we'll move on to the presentation, one-year evaluation of the schools out NYC.
Good morning, everyone. So, before we get to the actual evaluation of the SONYC initiative, I wanted to just say a few words about what is program evaluation, because we use that word evaluation in a lot of different ways. At DYCD, we have program managers who go out to programs and they evaluate the programs. We do performance evaluation of employees. We do a lot of different kinds of evaluation. So I wanted to just explain that when we talk about program evaluation, we talk about the use of social science tools to assess the implementation and the outcomes of social and educational programs. And the tools of social science are things like administrative data. So we have participant tracking data systems here at DYCD where the community-based organizations who run our programs enter information about their participants. It could be demographic information, it's information about the participation and so on, and then the evaluator can use that information to see a big picture about the initiative. Another source of administrative data is those same evaluations that the program managers are doing in the field. They enter them into a data system, and then we can again take a kind of a bird's eye view of all of that information. We use interviews, so an evaluator might interview young people or program staff or other partners such as a principal if the program is in a school and so on. Surveys, again, of various stakeholders, focus groups, and observations. And often evaluators would use some kind of a standard tool to do an observation where they're looking at the quality of a program. Is the staff member knowledgeable about the content that they're delivering? Are they doing it in a way that is respectful of the young people, et cetera, et cetera. So here is just a smattering, a list of some current and future evaluations that we have here at DYCD. The SONYC evaluation, which I will talk about momentarily. We have a small program that is funded by the Center for Economic Opportunity with Young Men's Initiative funding that is a mentoring program in 25 of our cornerstone programs, which I'm sure you know are community centers housed in NYCHA facilities. And so we have done an evaluation on a couple of occasions and actually have some data collection happening in the field right now of the YMI mentoring program. Work, Learn, and Grow, as you know, I'm sure, is an extension of the SYEP program that happened this past year for the first time with council funding. And Vanessa Rios, who sits next to me right now, and I are doing an evaluation of this initiative because it is the first time. We want to know how successful it is so we can come back to the council with a report saying this is what we're learning. Runaway and homeless youth transitional independent living centers, we're currently soliciting an external evaluator to see again how well this initiative is working. We're looking to do a comparison of our various models of high school programs in the coming year. And so there's, as you can see, we at DYCD are really trying to learn about how well we're doing, and then the purpose of doing an evaluation is not just to create a report, which we can say is kind of a dead document that ends up on somebody's shelf or in somebody's drawer, but really we want to use the findings to make changes to programs and improve them. And that's partly why we're here today, because I want to tell you about the outcomes of the first year evaluation of the SONYC program, and we are really trying to disseminate these findings broadly and widely so that we can make improvements to the program. All right, so perhaps before we even look at this slide, you have a handout in front of you. The first page of the handout is kind of an introduction to the findings, and it talks about the expansion of the SONYC initiative. SONYC, as you know, is Schools Out New York City. It is the middle school expansion. I see two here. The middle school expansion of the out-of-school time program in middle schools. And you can see even in this purple box here, in the school year 2013-2014, which was before the expansion, there were about a little less than 17,000 young people participating. Last school year, 2014-2015, close to 60,000. That was the expansion. And this school year, which is now ending as of March, already had 64,000 young people participating in SONYC, and I'm sure by the end of the fiscal year we will have more. So this is to the Commissioner's point about the expansion of the budget at DYCD, because we got this funding from the mayor to expand services for middle school young people. So with the expansion, we felt that it was really important to study both the implementation and the outcomes of this initiative. And so we wrote a request for proposals to solicit evaluators, and we wrote it in such a way that in the first year of the expansion, we really wanted the evaluator just to focus on implementation. We know that it takes time for a program to come up to speed, especially with such a huge expansion and so fast, that we didn't want to set up ourselves up for failure. We didn't want to say that things are not working well. So we really just wanted to focus on implementation. It's also really important to see how the program is working before we see what it is achieving. And when we talk about outcomes, we want to make sure that we align the outcomes to the program itself. So if we teach young people music, we don't want to assess their knowledge in chemistry, for example, because chemistry and music are not so aligned. So just as an example of, and you'll see I'm kind of giving you a hint of what's to come about the alignment of the program model and its outcomes. So in years 1 and 2, let me back up 1 second. So we did select an evaluator. American Institutes for Research is now the evaluator of the SONYC initiative. We've now been working with them for almost 2 years. We're very happy with them. They have an arm of the organization that focuses primarily on after school. So they're real experts in after school, and they know what they're doing, and they're wonderful to work with. So in years 1 and 2, we wanted to focus on understanding the implementation of the program. We are also focusing on youth leadership development, and this is because the SONYC initiative itself has a focus on youth leadership. When DYCD wrote the RFP for the program model, youth leadership was one of the areas that every program was supposed to offer services in. So we want to see how that's going. And AIR is doing a descriptive scan also of our administrative data, as I mentioned before. So they're doing, in year 1 and year 2, principal, teacher, program director, and staff interviews, youth and family surveys, that was year 1, program activity observations, and you can see the slide, I don't need to read it for you. So this is what we did in year 1 and year 2. It's hard to see these in the slide, so that's why I made these handouts for you. So if you take a look at the back of the first page where it says SONYC evaluation year 1 by the numbers, These are the activities that the evaluation team did to collect the information that we will talk about in a minute. So they conducted site visits in 37 sites, and these were selected to be representative of our initiative. Some of them are existing sites, some of them are new sites. We looked for sites in all boroughs and with different focus of programming, although we did find out that really by design, all the programs offered a balanced mix of activities, which is really what we're asking them to do. They spent close to 8,000 hours interviewing program directors, staff, principals, and teachers. They observed 2,300 hours of programming, and on and on and on. You can see that this was a very massive endeavor to collect all the information that we asked them to collect for us. And so let's take a look at the next page, which is the findings from the administrative data. This is information that came from the DYCD online system, where our CBOs are required to enter information about the participants. So we see the expansion right here from the 18 or so thousand youth in 2013-2014 to the, as I mentioned, almost 60,000 youth in the following school year. Young people participated in 13 million hours of programming in year one of the expansion, which is really a staggering amount. And this is not just what they were supposed to attend, but really what they attended. So 13 million of programming for an average of 236 hours per participant for the first year. And what were they doing? 33% of the time they participated in various enrichment activities, STEM, literacy, and arts. 27% of the time they participated in physical activity and healthy living kind of programming. 22% of the time leadership development. As we mentioned, leadership development is supposed to be offered in every program. And 18% of their time they participated in academic supports, which is tutoring, homework help, etc. So this is what the young people did. Let's look at the next slide, or the next page in the handout. And this information comes from the visits to the 37 sites, so the in-depth visits that included, it is the, what? We did advance the slide. This is it. Okay. So these findings represent data from about 7,000 hours of interviews. We had surveys with youth. About 2,000 young people responded to surveys. Nearly 1,000 family members responded to surveys about their young people in the program. And what did we find? So principals, teachers, and program staff all reported, or a very large majority of them reported, that the programs are strong, offer benefits to youth, and have a positive addition to the schools. So all of our stakeholders felt very strongly that these programs were working very well. They felt that the programs offered strong organizational and inclusionary practices. So we're looking at things such as offering a wide range of professional development for staff. We know that in after-school programs we have a large turnover because they're themselves young people, often college students. So we want to make sure that they provide the best programming to our young people. So all of our stakeholders agree that many of our programs do a really good job offering professional development for the staff in these programs. Programs we're using a variety of strategies to recruit and enroll youth, so they did meet their contracted numbers and actually even exceeded them. And many of the programs encourage youth of all colors and abilities to participate. We have young people who are English language learners, those who identify themselves to have disabilities participate in our programming. The stakeholders, the evaluators observed a lot of programming themselves, many hours of observations, and concluded based on these observations that program quality and youth outcomes are high. So they observed the staff in the programs actually interact with young people, and based on their observation with the tools that they're using, the standard tools that they're using to assess program quality, concluded that program quality was high. In the surveys that families responded to, again, about 1,000 parents or other family members responded. 98% said that their child likes coming to the program. 97% would recommend the program to other families. 98% reported that their child had fun in program activities, and 92% feel welcome in the program, themselves feeling welcome. So I think this is a ringing endorsement for how parents and other family members feel about the programming. The team from AIR also interviewed teachers in the school who are not affiliated with the program to find out what they thought about it. And even those people who are not participating in the program felt that the program quality was high. It contributed to the school climate, and all staff, or large majority of staff, both program and school staff, felt that young people benefited greatly from the programs, especially in social and emotional learning outcomes. And the last piece I have here, not the last, the one before last, this is we call this a wordle or a word cloud. The size of the letters, the size of the words represent the frequency with which people said that word. So these come from open-ended comments that young people gave at the end of their surveys, and the question was, how do you feel in your SONYC program? And this is what young people said. And we are incredibly satisfied to see that the biggest word is safe, because it's such a young initiative to have such a strong sense of safety already, that really says that I think DYCD laid the groundwork for this expansion, so we didn't have to start working on safety. That was already there. And young people said that they're happy and they feel great and good and they belong and comfortable and awesome. And some people said annoyed and bored, and remember, these are 11 to 14-year-olds. I have a middle schooler at home, so I can tell you that bored is something that I hear often at home. All right, so the good people from American Institute for Research convened an advisory board for the evaluation, made up of other funders, some community-based organizations, Department of Education, our partner, and trying to think who else is in the room. And about a year ago, we met with this group to ask them, once we have findings from the first year of the evaluation, what do you think we should do with it? What do you think, who should we tell? And so the group came up with what you have in front of you, which is, who is the audience? What channel should we use to tell them about the finding? And what would be the product or the message? And we've done a lot of the things that are already on this page. There are some things that we are still planning. And one of the things I wanted to do with you today is ask you if you had any other suggestions on where we could take these findings. So before we get to that, of course, the mayor knows about these findings. We had meetings with Deputy Mayor Bury, who knows about these findings. There was a press release that came out of the mayor's office about these findings. There was a newspaper article about these findings. We sent those 5 pieces of paper that you have in front of you to every executive director of the CBOs that run our programs, every program director, and every principal in the schools that our programs are housed. We are planning sessions with more program staff, either later this summer or early in the fall. And we're looking for university partners who might be able to disseminate these findings. So I think we're going to be presenting. There is an annual conference of middle school principals that the Department of Education holds in March, and so we're planning to submit a proposal to them, and if we're accepted, we will present to principals. So I don't want to spend too much time because I also want to talk to you a little bit about our plans for the evaluation for years 3 and 4. No, just go back. No, go back to the, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So perhaps I can open it up, and if you guys have any thoughts on how we can disseminate these findings to really the world of after school, of funders, who should we approach, what should we tell them, who can you connect us to?
I'm not exactly answering that question, but I have a different question. And with all kinds of congratulations to DYCD and all the contract agencies, et cetera, to think about how many children are involved that this has become part of their life for in a very short period of time. I have a different question. It's as if remembering that the door is locked here, is what was learned that would be helpful in a different way. So clearly what's been the result is all this positive, and I'm not in any way putting that down, but what was learned that then can say, what can we do to make it better?
Good question. So one of the things that we found that we would like to improve on is youth voice. So we had a survey to all the young people, and we asked them, what do you think about your program? And they said, well, we would like to say more about program. And this really dovetails very well with youth leadership. Vanessa and I went to a panel on youth leadership yesterday afternoon where some providers were talking about how they're letting their young people do more. Not just tell them this is how you can become a leader, but really let them be leaders. And I think we can do a better job helping our young people become leaders. And we'll talk a little bit more about leaders, but it did sound like our programs don't give youth as much voice as they would like. And I think working with our providers to do that better, and we do have initiatives around DYCD now to help our programs do leadership with the young people better. So we're hoping that that will improve.
But as you promulgate all this information, I hope that you include that. It's not a criticism, because I think that people will then respond so that it's not all, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread.
It's not the rainbow. Very good point. Thank you for that.
Pass the mic. All right. So I had 2 questions. One is that let me first start by answering your question. I think that grant makers would be really interested in this program. I think the best way to present this would be maybe a briefing at Philanthropy New York. You'll capture a wide range of grant makers, and you'll just need a couple of foundation sponsors. I'm happy to be one of them, and we can help you identify some other folks to do that. And I think it could also be an opportunity to talk about this evaluation on this particular program, but also other programs that you mentioned in the beginning. So I think that's the best way to start. The question I had was, and this is sorry for a funder question, but this is a funder question. How much money did this program have in 2014, and then how much money was added to increase the numbers? Because I hate to go into the numbers game, but I am just curious about that cost.
We added 153 million. So, so that was I can't remember what the baseline funding was, but I think the other thing that was important to note is that when we track the middle school programs, the biggest expansion obviously was the SONYC program, but for the second consecutive year, the city served more than 110,000 young people in middle school programs, including the Beacons and Cornerstones and the city Department of Education's 21st Century programs. I think we're at, last number I saw was 113,000 and change, and that was about a month ago. So, and it seamlessly, not a fanfare. And we had, when we were trying to conceive this program 2 years ago, we were trying to figure out, we knew that every middle school student was going to sign up because there's something like, I want to say 244,000 middle schoolers. That was based on data back in 2013. So we thought between 40 and 45%, and we're pretty much at where we thought we'd be. Because this is a self-selection process. It's not a mandated program. And what we added was something that we didn't have before, which was drop-in activities. Because the program operates 15 hours a week, but we know not every young person is going to show up 15 hours a week. There's some young people who may be more challenged, who may just want to check it out, and show maybe 2 or 3 hours a week for a specific type of activity. But that's how you get those young people who are the most difficult to serve into your programs. And there are those who are like self-starters and will be there for 9 hours. And so that's why we're able to leverage the investment to serve even more young people than we traditionally have served.
I don't know if this is on, but I think I can just speak loudly. Again, just to, I really do commend you on the results and DYCD.
I definitely agree with Ray. As you disseminate the results, I definitely think I jotted down room for improvement. I think that does add credibility to all the good things, and I'd love to hear if there's even, maybe not in this conversation, but later if there are some other things that you learn, because I think that's always interesting to funders and different constituents. The other thing is outliers. When you kind of looked across the board at the 37 sites, were there some that maybe weren't as strong? I think that's interesting because that's something going forward when you do evaluation year over year, maybe those outliers can get extra help for improvement. So that's just thoughts on that side. Also, we're a member of Philanthropy New York as well, so if we can help you get out in front of those funders, that would be great. We can talk about it later. The other thing is in terms of dissemination and what how to get the word out. I guess my question is kind of what the goal is. I know the goal is funding, and I'd love to hear kind of the breakdown between public and private, or how much private funding you're looking for, the city's looking for. But the other thing is the goal also getting more schools on board, or more students, or more community-based organizations? So I'd love to hear kind of what the end goal is.
Well, let me speak to that. So I think the biggest challenge now that we've scaled is really continuing quality. And the biggest challenge to quality is having enough staff. We're at a point in the system's growth that people are starting to cannibalize each other for good staff. Because we know any good program is only as good as the staff you have. And so I hear this anecdotally that people within the same organization that they go to run a SONYC program. So we got a small grant. Actually, we lobbied for it. The Mayor's Fund got it. I can't remember the foundation, and it went to CUNY because we want to expand the DYCD Scholars Program, which is a college track program that in youth studies, where I think it's 12 credits in youth studies and towards a degree. because we want to create the next generation of youth workers. As earlier on, someone told me a lot of these executive directors are retiring. So, it starts from the bottom. And so that's the biggest challenge. As far as expansion, since we did the last request for proposal, which was in January of 2015, a number of schools have added grades. In fact, the one down the road, the Spruce Street Academy, added the 6th grade this past September. So we're trying to get from the Department of Education a universe of which schools have added grades that weren't eligible at the time we released the RFP, and I'm going to share it with the mayor's office and let them decide whether they want to give us more money to add schools. Because we have 562 SONYC programs. It's an incredible number. We have 1,000 after-school programs over, but the largest number is SONYC, 562. Mostly in schools. We have some in community centers. So we are, we're not going to rest on our laurels. We're going to see where there's been growth. And if the decision is made, we'll obviously try to add more schools.
I think we have time for some more questions.
Okay.
So my question actually was related to Elizabeth's point about in terms of you have the evaluation and then as you're putting it out, what's the purpose of it? And I guess it's more of a comment than a question to think about. I definitely understand the idea of program expansion, but I also think if you could identify what are those common characteristics that make this program uniquely successful, because I think a lot of people run after-school programs funded through different sources, particularly middle schoolers that are coming as regularly as they're coming and saying, as much positive things about it, just to share that information for other folks who are getting funding from other streams and maybe are struggling, because I think it's the bigger picture, right? As long as we have young people in this age range, it links up to positive after-school programs. It doesn't really matter who's running it if if we have the kind of recipe for success and we've kind of shared that, across the, the circle of folks who are doing that.
Just introducing myself again, I'm Denise Williams. Just 2 points in your granule. We do have program managers, so this view is from up here. And if you were to look at the site visit reports, we do have programs who are not performing well. This is about the 37. There are 500 and some odd other programs. And so there's also been a corresponding investment in capacity building. So we have, both training, organizational development, lots of support. The other thing I would say is, in terms of our providers, one of the biggest struggles have been financial management. Folks are not spending the money down. There's been a real challenge, so we're working with CUNY again and Financial Management Associates. We have an initiative focused on that, but we're also convening folks to figure out how we can help. How we can support the pipeline, not just of youth workers, but of folks who might have finance backgrounds who don't see the nonprofit sector necessarily as an option. And, one of my favorite agencies, he said to me, one day I went to bed, I had 4 programs. The next day I got up and I had 12, right? So he was running a very different organization, and we're focused on helping them do that in a real specific, concentrated way. So there are ones that aren't performing, you just didn't catch them in this 37 or whatever the focus
is. There's one other thing I think where I'm trying to think of what role private funders might play that's a bite-sized investment. And Denise can maybe talk a little bit about this, is that we're piloting a program with CUNY to help middle schoolers and their parents navigate the DOE high school selection process. Because we know, this is a crucial time in a young person's life. And if you don't pick the right school, high school, you're really in a bad place. And having, over the years of being a deputy commissioner here, a number of my staff, they went through this the high school selection process, and it's daunting. It's not user-friendly, let me put it that way. And unless you're a middle-class parent who can take time off of work and go visit schools, and then I think a lot of working parents just give up, which is probably a bad thing for their child. So, we're piloting a program with CUNY.
Karen.
Cara, where we're trying to train the staff of the nonprofits on how to help the parents. But that's an area, because one of the things I would certainly like to do going forward is to look at the young people who started in 6th grade and went through the program all 3 years, what high schools they pick, and what's their long-term impact. But I think the selection process of high schools is really daunting. Not to criticize the DOE, but it's really daunting.
Just to say,
one of the things, and you work with Kara also, and maybe we can have some relationship with this effort, that I think, it's really key that the conversation not just be about this daunting process, which is truly is difficult, but that it's a process of looking at your future, and that we try to incorporate into the SONYC conversations about what could you be doing as you get older, as you become an adult, and how does this all connect to that? Because that's another thing that gets lost in this. It just becomes this obstacle that I have to get through, and the question about what is an appropriate school. So I know we've struggled with our career and technical education programs because a lot of people think, oh, well, my kid's going to college, and they think somehow CTE is about not that, or other people want to go to CTE programs and think it means like I'm never going to have to go to school anymore after I finish this, which is also a false idea. So anyway, it's a great opportunity to sort of blend not just the operational aspects of getting into high school, but a focus on future planning.
So I won't take too much more of your time, but I do want to tell you just a couple of things. So DYCD created a youth leadership development framework, which you see here. I'm not going to talk about it. And AIR took that and created for us youth development survey or tool or assessment, whatever you want to call it. It is being piloted this year. They did a very rigorous process of coming up with the tool, with the items, piloted it with young people, interviewed them about the content, etc. So this is being piloted today, this spring. And next year, this will be administered to all the young people in the SONYC program. And so this has two implications. One is we want to start looking at the outcomes of our programs, and because leadership is such an important aspect of it, we want to see how they're doing. But we also had a conversation with Deputy Mayor Bury, who said, what are you measuring that is related to the school day? Because we do have the partnership with the Department of Education, and we all want young people to succeed academically. So we, and again, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but we looked at various ways to think about how we might assess outcomes of after-school programs. And we agreed that looking at youth leadership is actually the way to do that, because we can measure things like motivation, we can measure things like communication skills, we can measure things like persistence, which are they're really the precursors to academic achievement. So wanted to let you know we are cognizant of academics, but we're not measuring academics. We will be measuring those precursors to academic achievement that are most aligned with what we do in after-school programs. So stay tuned for those results.
So we're going to move to the next conversation, career opportunities in construction.
Yes. Just for folks that don't know, I'm part of the New York City Workforce Development Board. This is a board that is mandated by federal law to oversee a pool of Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act dollars that flows to the City of New York to serve both adults and youth. And at our last Workforce Development Board meeting, we did something a little different. We went to a training center for Plumbers Local 1, and we held our meeting there for a variety of reasons. Number one, we wanted to learn more about the construction field. We also wanted to learn more about apprenticeship programs. And I don't want to assume what people know or don't know, but an apprenticeship is basically, it's a paid job. And it is a combination of classroom instruction and on-the-job training or learning, and there's a set of steps in terms of pay increases over time. And basically it's for somebody to master a skilled trade over time. So you start out as an apprentice and you end up as a journeyman level master of your craft. And one of the reasons why we wanted to go to this particular program was, this is an incredible learning model. And apprenticeship programs can run 2 to, I think, as long as 6 years. But it's just a very compelling mix of theory and practice. And the plumbers have another bonus, which is that apprentices also earn an associate's degree from SUNY Empire College. So they're getting the benefit of, they finish, I think their program is 5 years, they're making good money at the end of that 5 years, and they also come out with an associate's degree. This is a really impressive facility. Went to the training center, they have cool stuff, things, plumbing is not just about fixing toilets, it's about welding. These are the guys that are like helping, build the new aqueduct into the city and making sure that water systems are safe and clean. And it's also, it's managed by a sort of a joint labor management fund. So it's very much aligned to what employers need, because the employers are at the table and they sort of help fund this whole training program. And then of course the union is involved. And so it's just a terrific partnership, a really terrific partnership. And one of the conversations that we had at our last meeting, and then we had a sort of a subsequent follow-up, was, apprenticeship programs in general are great. And they tend to be concentrated in the construction industry. They're not limited to that, but they tend to be concentrated there. And one of our questions was, well, how do we increase access for certain populations, for people who don't know about these programs, and what's the right way to do that? And what we learned is that, the typical way into an apprenticeship program is you got to get in line when they are trying to hire for new apprentices, and you got to get your hands on a paper application, and they're often limited, and sometimes people have to camp out overnight waiting for one of these, whatever limited number of paper applications there are. But there's a shortcut to that process, which are called pre-apprenticeship programs. And there are lots of pre-apprenticeship programs in the city, but there are at least 3 of them that have what's called direct entry, which means you kind of take a shortcut. You skip that waiting in line, and you can get direct access. And that includes non-traditional employment for women. That's a program a lot of people have heard of. Helmets to hard hats, that serves veterans. And then finally, the Edward J. Malloy Construction Skills Initiative, which targets, I think it's career technical education high school students that have some sort of focus on construction. So, one of our ongoing questions is how do we, you don't want to, these pre-apprenticeship programs only have so many people they can serve in a given year. You don't want to sort of, scream from the rooftops about these programs and have a flood of people come. But we've been trying to think about how do you sort of be more targeted, particularly among youth. How can you get the word out about these programs, and or even just provide some career exploration opportunities for young people who don't know about construction. So we had a gentleman who's the political director of the operating engineers union, one of the operating engineers union, the crane operators. And he was saying that his experience was that the main reason that he got into the union was because his uncle did it. He's got somebody he's familiar with. And if it's something you don't know, it's very hard to imagine yourself going down this particular path. Like who thinks about being a crane operator, right? And yet crane operators make more money than any other construction trades union in the entire city. So that's sort of one of our questions that we're grappling with. And I'd be curious if folks have thoughts about how we think about that question, which is really making young people more aware of construction as a trade, and then potentially helping them think about applying to be in a pre-apprenticeship program, which is sort of a fast-track way into a fully baked apprenticeship program.
Do they have a problem filling the pre-apprenticeship programs, 1? And then number 2, should there be more programs like that, which goes to the first thing, are there openings there and then ultimately jobs? And we know that construction goes up and down based upon the economy and a variety of other things.
I don't know for certain, but my impression is that the pre-apprenticeship programs don't have a lot of empty spaces generally. It's not like they're dying for people. I think the word gets out. I just don't know how it gets out and to whom it gets out. Maybe it's uncles. Yeah. And then your second question, are these enough? I mean, part of the issue is that, construction unions, frankly, they're very powerful. And the reason that these are direct entry programs is because, back in, I think, 2005, the city negotiated with, I think, the unions and maybe the building trade employers as part of the mayor's commission on construction opportunity. There's an agreement in place, a written agreement that it's 3, maybe 4 programs up to a certain percentage of total apprenticeship slots go to them if they have qualified people. And it ends up being, I think, like 35% of the total apprentice openings in a given year are dedicated to just these programs. But beyond that, you don't have that sort of special preference. So it's kind of already limited in this written agreement. Now, somebody could decide that it would be worth trying to negotiate that to a higher level to take a higher slice of that, but that is a very political thing to do that's much of a higher, it's high above my pay grade.
So I think one of the things that's important, because we've grappled with this at the department, so one thing is, it's not just that your uncle does it, but your uncle is the one that knows and grabs you and drags you down there and puts you in the line and stands next to you because he went through this and he knows that you have to be there on June 12th at blah, blah, blah time, because this is other teenagers are like, oh yeah, I want to do this, and then like, oh, it was last week? Oh gee, I missed that, oh too bad. I really believe that if we want to do this, you got to have a person that's dedicated, whether it's connected to you or DYCD, somebody it's really got to be a shepherd that's grabbing these kids and taking them there and making them stand in line and telling them to show up, blah, blah, blah. The other thing that I harp on is the city is one of the largest employers of these kinds of people. So I believe that we should be working with DCAS centrally. All the different city departments need welders, construction people, housing, and the housing authority, but and there was some work that was successful with organizing, putting all the automotive together in one unit for the city, whereas different departments used to have their own automotive units, and then the city, somebody had the brilliant idea of like, let's have an automotive unit, and the DOE has been successful in partnering our auto programs with them and getting some people in there, and we have a person that used to be an automotive CTE student who's now like the manager of it, so he's connected. So he's like the uncle to a lot of kids. So I think that's another place is DCAS, because there's a lot of employment opportunity there for construction aligned efforts. But I really think you need to create a shepherd whose sole purpose is to understand when these opportunities come, and then we could branch out and do something like the after-school programs could do some work around career exploration with kids, but the same person can help bring the people together. The Carpenters Union usually has an open house in the spring where they show off their apprentices' work. I've been to those programs many times. They welcome, groups could come and take the kids around. Anyway, somebody's got to take it on.
No, I agree. I think, this is not plumbers, but, DDC is really committed to creating a career path for young people in engineering and architecture. So so they have internship programs, and they've been a work site for SYP for the last 2 summers. And so it's worth a conversation with DDC and Lee Laballas, the Deputy Commissioner for STEAM, because they want to, so if they champion this, and they can hire young people out of school in the field. So I agree, the unions are a challenge. So if you can figure out a way to get around the unions, and city agencies, I think, are a great place. DDC, I think about DEP, there are a bunch of city agencies that hire in these titles.
Yeah, a number of our grantees over the years have tried to build stronger community union relationships, usually without success. The only groups that have really been able to find their way to actually building relationships with unions are groups that are doing advocacy at the city or state level, where their advocacy work with the unions helps to move an agenda that they want to move. So that's been an effective way. So maybe some of those advocacy groups could play an intermediary role with community organizations, working with the city to actually move the unions to actually open up these programs. And one of our groups a few years ago came up with an idea to use the HUD Section 4, which allows for construction, apprentice jobs and positions for people who live in public housing. And they tried to move that with a couple of unions. Unfortunately, again, there wasn't that sort of quid pro quo around, we do this, you can do this for us. So I feel like if there's a way to actually bring the public-private and the nonprofit organizations together to try to push for an agenda, that might be a way to do it. And I'm happy to connect you with some of those groups that have tried to work on that or have had a little success.
Just one other thing is that years ago, I believe that it's still there. I think it was in the Bronx. 32BJ, is that whatever? Is that literally in terms of your unions? You have not-for-profits, for example, who are union shops, and the whole issue about their uncle, one union talks to another union, but you have a whole other area in terms of those that are part of the 32BJ union and their relationship to apartment houses, their relationship also who wind up hiring people with some of the skills that you're talking about.
I think there's a huge difference between 32BJ and the construction unions. 32BJ is a union disproportionately of minority people. It's a low-paying union. It's a union job where when you retire, you're really still in financial trouble. You really don't have any health care benefits, and you have to join a commercial health insurance plan. We're talking about real jobs here, and unions have been a huge source of resistance to African Americans and Latinos. There have been a lot of demonstrations about these unions. They have not been cooperative at all, and I'm not saying, I think they've been, I don't think it's based on race. I think it's just based on protection. People are in these unions, they're good jobs, they're very limited, and they're going to keep it to their family members. And unless someone's going to really make an attempt to change this, I think we're misleading people if we're going to tell young people that we're going to get them into a union, knowing full well we're not going to get them into this union. So, I think we need to encourage kids to join 32BJ, join the fire department, police department, city agencies. But I think we really have to be honest. We don't want to bring a lot of people in from Brownsville or someplace else for union jobs and know that these high-paying union jobs are really, really not there yet. They will be one day, but I'm not so sure they're available today.
Just to say, we have been approached by several last couple of years plumbers groups who were desperately looking for plumbers, and I can tell you that unfortunately the department, the number of plumbing programs that we have has been reduced because everyone's like, oh, go to college, and so high schools were not attracting kids to come there, and HVAC and welding are areas that they really are already beginning to have shortages in. So you're right, there's not going to be like hundreds of jobs, it's always going to be a small number, but I think there are some shortage. Plumbers in particular are one area where people aren't thinking like this is a great thing to do, and so, maybe it's 100 a year, but it's 100 that we don't have now.
Right, and I will say we do have a number of unions that are on our workforce development board. The plumbers are not, but the operating engineers are 32BJs represented. I think the unions have made progress. I'm not going to say that they've solved this problem. I think they've made progress over the years, especially over the last decade. I think that some of what I've observed anecdotally anyway is that, like Tom said, a lot more, it's less the sort of father to the son. It's like, you should go to college. Don't do this, don't get your hands dirty, you should go to college. And so you don't have as strong of a backfill or replacement mechanism as maybe you used to have. But it's still an issue. It's still very much an issue. I agree.
Okay, thanks for 2 lively discussions. All right, that was really great. So we definitely want to follow up on that because I think a number of us have ideas around that, and we should have a continuation of this conversation, maybe between meetings, to try to move some of this forward. So now on to announcements and new business. Anyone? Announcements?
Thank you. I am Mark Misrock. I'm with the National Working Positive Coalition, and I'm doing some work short-term with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene Bureau of HIV Prevention and Control, building up to a half-day conference on employment as a social determinant of health in HIV care and prevention. It's going to be happening on August 19th at Medgar Evers College. It's funded through a CDC grant that is particularly targeting meeting unmet needs of young gay and bisexual Black men and transgender women of color. And I'm hoping to find partnership and support from among you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So now we need to vote on the minutes. Are there any changes that anyone would like to add or take? No? Can I get a motion to accept the minutes? Thank you. Second. Okay. All in favor? Great. Thank you. So anything else? All right. Have a great summer. We'll see you at the next meeting in the fall.